Welcome to Brick by Brick. Join me, Lauren Winnett, as I share my personal journey of building a thriving real estate and hard money lending business from the ground up. Along the way, we'll explore the strategies, challenges, and breakthroughs that come with growing wealth. Whether you're a seasoned investor or aspiring entrepreneur, or simply curious about the world of private lending and real estate, this podcast is packed with actionable insights, real-world stories, and mindset tips to help you build your own path to success brick by brick. Welcome to another episode of Brick by Brick. I'm your host, Lauren Winnett, and today we have an awesome guest, my good friend, Dan Rivers. Dan lives down in Charleston, South Carolina, where I met him at a mastermind about a year ago, right, Dan?
Yes.
And since then, we've kept in contact. He sent me some people, I've sent him some people, and I've found that Dan is just a really great go-giver. He's all about helping the people around him, helping them grow. And so today we're going to talk to Dan about his business, about where he came from, some of the challenges and struggles he's had along the way, and his newest venture. And so, Dan, thanks for joining the show. I'm excited to talk to you. Like I mentioned, we met about a year ago down in Charleston. And can you give us a little bit about, who you are, what drives you, and kind of where you're headed?
Yeah, no, I appreciate the intro first off. Thank you, Lauren. Really appreciate the kind words. Absolutely, yeah. So I started off Dan Rivers, as you mentioned, originally a Boston boy, moved down here to Charleston 2018. Perfect time to be in better weather, and my wife and I absolutely love it down here. But yeah. So I like to first off just tell people who I am is. I used to say girl dad, but now I got a baby boy on the way. So now I will just say dad. But I'm a dad and husband first. Thank you. 2 kids. The other one's due in a couple months. I'm super excited for my son to come and join the squad. I need some more manpower here. I got a daughter, a wife, and a female dog. So a lot of I need someone else to support the manpower here. But no, family and father and world traveler are the way I like to start describing myself, because those are my why, those are my goals. And that is why I became an entrepreneur. Maybe not why I became one, but definitely the driver of why I'm trying to succeed as one and love being an entrepreneur is to travel, be with my family, take care of them. But other than that, I've been in the real estate world as far as business side of me since 2005, from managing high-rise condominiums on Clearwater Beach down in Tampa and HOAs. Did that for about 10, 12 years, sold a little bit of concrete and paving sales. And then when I moved down here in 2018, got back into the real estate side of things, just on the sales and investing side.
Got it. So, well, first, congratulations on the new little boy. As a father of 4, good luck with that transition from 1 to 2. And also, I can tell you that with boys, everything's broken and sticky all the time. But let's talk a little bit about kind of that transition from being down in Florida and dealing with high rise to where you are today in South Carolina, and what that transition looked like. You moved back to Charleston. What inspired you to get back into real estate? What did you start doing right away? And are you still doing that, or have you shifted your focus?
Yeah, no, so long story short, 2005, I didn't even really know the real estate business. I was actually working at a bank and almost went to be in the finance sector, selling stocks, bonds. I actually had a choice. I had someone offer me a job to do that role, be a financial advisor, or I did a loan for some guy in Florida, just happened to be from Boston. And he talked about, hey, do you want to come do some property management and real estate? So I actually made the decision to go into real estate, not knowing anything about real estate. I was about 24 years old. And I was like, all right, this sounds cool. I got to tell you, 10 years, I started off literally day one when I was hired. I walked into the office and they were like, I can't remember the exact amount, don't quote me. Here's 600 units, 12 buildings, including high rise on the beach. Go ahead and manage them. So kind of cool. I learned by fire real quick. I screwed up a ton, and I'm not an organized person, definitely not at all, but I had to learn how to be organized, systematic, and just literally put my head down and learn about financials, learn about condominium documents, bylaws, covenants, everything. I had to learn about budgeting. I had to learn about managing contractors, putting contracts together. I had to learn about insurance and insurance coverage on large buildings and how it works from the unit versus the entire building. So within 1 year, I was able to just absorb all of this information that had helped my trajectory in property management go from a property manager to a vice president of a company up in Boston when I moved back up there for a few years. And then at about that 11, 12 year mark, I can go through a lot of stories that happened, but bottom line is I was just burnt out in the property management side of things. So I took a year hiatus, worked for a good friend of mine doing some sales. And then my wife, when I had met her in 2015, had said, hey, I don't, she was about to move out of Boston when we met, but she stayed because we just had a nice connection. It was awesome. And she said, hey, one promise, we move out of Boston at some point. So I don't know why, but in 2018 was the point. We moved down to South Carolina, and I told my wife, I was like, listen, I have all this real estate knowledge and background, but I don't want to manage anymore. I want to bet on myself and sell real estate. Again, at this point, I didn't even know I want to be an investor, but I was like, I just want to sell real estate. And she's an awesome person. She's the reason why I'm at where I'm at today. She's like, go for it. She got the 9 to 5 job, and she's like, go get your real estate license and see what you can do. And then from there, I'll go quickly. Made about 28,000, did about 5 deals my first year, to about 90, to about 100 and something, to about 700 something. And now I was able to build $1 million company in about 4 or 5 years and bringing on a few people to help me out. So it kind of just, the trajectory just shot quickly. And I really do owe it all to my wife for believing in me and betting on me and giving me that opportunity.
That's awesome. I think that we often undervalue the support system that we have behind us. It's really easy to say, oh, I have kids, so I can't do something, or I have a wife that, maybe puts the brakes on something, or is pushing me towards something I don't want to do. But often I wouldn't be where I am if I didn't have the support system that I have. And it sounds like that could be said for you as well.
Yeah, 100%. There's a couple of factors that I owe, and if you might ask this question, but I guess I'll just throw it out there now. There's a couple of factors that I owe to, I say, my success. I got a long way to truly be successful to where I want to be. I make a lot of mistakes and I screw up a lot, and I'm happy to talk about whatever mess ups you want to talk about. But there's 2 driving factors that have helped me become successful in life. One of them is 100% my wife, and believing in me and trusting in me and like giving me that confidence boost that I needed, that if she believes in me, then I need to believe in myself. And then the other thing that started when I was 16 years old was having open heart surgery back then. I had a leaky heart valve, aortic valve. And I had my first surgery at 16, my second surgery at 29, where they ended up replacing the heart valve. And that's given me the attitude of, don't get me wrong, when I first had it, the attitude was not this way. I had the why me attitude. I had the victim mentality. I had the, life sucks. I'm sorry if you could swear in here. Sorry. I was kind of an asshole. I wasn't the best person. I just hated life. I had a lot of anger. I was 16 years old. I didn't know what to think. But eventually it did grow from that to, hey, wait a second, I have a second chance. I go around, you see kids with cancer, you see people struggling in a lot of different ways. Yeah, I struggle, but who cares? Everybody struggles. And I was able to overcome that struggle and actually turn it into a driving factor to believe in myself, not give up, and honestly, not give a care, and just go for it. Just take chances in life.
So talk to me about that transition from, the victim mentality and, the struggling to using it from a negative to a positive. Was there a specific event that caused that? Or were you in coaching or therapy, or what was that mental shift like, and what emotions were involved around that?
I don't recall an exact day. I'm not going to lie to you and be like, oh, this was the exact moment that it happened. It was more of just maturing. Probably by the time I got into my mid to late 20s, I just started to mature and realize that, listen, I can be angry or have it hold me back, or I can use it as a driving factor. And I've always had big aspirations in life. My parents can tell you, I was a typical entrepreneur as a kid. I was all over the place. I couldn't focus. I wanted to do 1,000 different things. I would do really good at math and anything that had to do with math, business, science. And I would do really bad at anything that had to do with English, history, things of that nature, even though I love history now. But back then, wasn't something that I was good at. So I was just kind of all over the place. And I think it just had to do with, as I matured and grew up and started to just understand what I wanted to do in life and just be a more of an adult, go from that kid of anger and why me to maturing and starting to realize like, hey, I have a second chance at life. I have a chance to do something great in this world. And I have, aspirations of being something great. And I came from a middle-class family, working class family. Loved my dad. He taught me to respect people, whoever they are. He taught me to, just be a good person and do the right thing, hold the door for everybody. Just do things that make you a good person. My mom as well. But I didn't come from someone that's like, hey, you could be anything in this world. You could be an entrepreneur. You could be a business owner. You could do all this stuff. But I started to surround myself with people like that. And then I just realized like, hey, I can either keep the victim mentality, which I only had for a very short stint, or I can use it as a driving factor. And so in that kind of like my 20s, I just used it to drive me to become successful.
I mean, kudos for you, because you say it just kind of happened in maturity, but I know a lot of people that are in their 60s that still have a victim mentality. I mean, I think in general, the population is overweight, depressed, and victim mentality, right? And so the few of us that realize that, the things that happen to us are, you can either say that somebody else's fault and give all the power away, or you can say it's your own fault and choose to take that power back, to make the choice to make yourself better. Those are the people that are successful. So I want to go back to a comment you said where you said, I'm not successful yet. I think about that word a lot and what it means, because to me, it means something different to everyone. And maybe it's financial, maybe it's other things. What does success mean to you? And do you really think that you haven't achieved it based on that definition?
Yeah. So yeah, that's a good point. I'm glad you kind of caught that. I'm not saying I'm not, I guess I'm not saying I'm not successful. I just feel like I have a lot of learning and growth to go to be truly successful and where I want to be when it comes to business. Because, I've done a lot of things. And I'll tell you, as an entrepreneur, I've had shiny object syndrome. I do 4 things at once, I think I had 7 businesses at one point, and like they were all doing, most of them were doing okay. And instead of doing that, I should just nix a bunch of them and just focus on the 1 or 2 that are really productive that I can double down on and give 100% of my attention to. So that's where I guess I kind of meant, not that I'm not successful, but I still have, and that's why I'm in masterminds and all these groups, is to listen to people and stop having shiny object syndrome and just hyper focus on 1 or 2 things, which is what we're doing now. And guess what? Those things are actually producing more and getting better. And they're gonna, be our bread and butter. And I don't need to do 7 different things. I need to hyper focus on just these few things to be successful. Yeah. So that's, I guess I appreciate you calling me out for that. That's not that I do feel like I'm successful. And I also think this is something that I'm grateful for every morning. I try to say a few things I'm grateful for each morning to get me in a good mood and get me going for the day. And one of the things is, we talk about wealth all the time in business. And a whole reason is we're trying to build, the generational wealth for our family or be rich or wealthy. When I truly think about it, I feel like I am wealthier than most people. Definitely not in my bank account, but in my life. Like, I am able to take my daughter to school every day and then either go to the gym before or after. I'm able to pick my daughter up at school most days. I'm able to, yesterday in the afternoon, schedule in a date day where I went out with my wife. We have a community dock here and had lunch on the community dock. I'm able to pretty much write the script of my life and have, the ability to have a business that gives me enough time. I'm not saying every day, every minute, I can do whatever the hell I want. No, I have to focus and hyper focus, be intentional and get work done and build my business. But I do have the luxury of doing it on my schedule and still living the life that I want. So I truly feel like I am very wealthy when it comes to time.
I love that. I think if most people that are just getting started in business really sat down and thought about it, that's really what their goal is, right? Because they all sit down like, oh, I want money. And I had this conversation with my 10-year-old yesterday where he was saying, oh, somebody said that money can't make you happy. And I said, well, I don't agree with that. I also don't agree that money can make you happy. If someone's sitting with a giant pile of money in a room, are they really happy? Maybe for a short period of time, but really what you're going to use that money for is to buy experiences or adjust your life in a way that gives you the freedom that you're talking about, right? And even just buying things like if you go to buy a car, you're really excited up to when you buy the car. You're the most excited the second you buy the car. And then your level of excitement starts tailing off. And then you're like, what's the next thing I can buy? Now, if I go and spend that money on a vacation, you mentioned you're a world traveler. I'm excited as I prepare for the trip. I'm excited as I'm on the trip. And I'm excited when I think back of the memories of the trip. So, designing your life or with the opportunity you have of having a business is, in my mind, really what the ultimate goal is. And I have similar. Monday at 10:30 in the morning, I go to the batting cages for pitching lessons with my 10-year-old. I could never do that if I had, a job. And I love that. I love that I get to be there with him to do that, give him the opportunity to chase his dreams, while still focusing on my dreams as well. And maybe I'm on phone calls or whatever while he's there, but I'm there. And so I 100% agree with all that. I think too much of the time the definition of success is the number of commas and zeros in your bank account. And I think that greatly overlooks a vast majority of what success is, at least to me. And then some people, maybe it is just straight money. But to me, it's a whole variety of things, including what you were just talking about.
See, and I would even challenge that part about like anybody who says it is just about money. You start digging down, and I forget what it was. It was a book or something that said, basically act like a 5-year-old. Just keep asking why. And if someone truly says, oh, it's just about money, well, why? Well, why? So that I could tell people I have all this money. Well, why? Well, because I want to have this big mansion. All right, well, why? And they just literally act like a kid. And I think it's a good exercise to do to ourselves. And I kind of do it in my head sometimes. I'm like, well, why do I really want that? Well, why is this? And it boils down to, I want it so that I can spend time with my kids. I could be the dad that goes to everything, and people are asking, does this guy even work? How does he show up to every school event, every whatever it is? And so that I can travel the world with my family to show them not only just seeing the world, but also different cultures, just exposing them to different cultures and different ways that people operate and different perspectives, which I think a lot of people in this world need more perspective, so they stop hating so much and understand that there's reasons why people think differently. And then when I dig down the why, I'm like, I don't need $100 million. I have a certain financial goal I'm going towards. I have a certain passive income goal I'm going towards. And when we hit those, not that I won't still push and do things, because I absolutely love business, but I want to make sure that whatever I'm doing the 4 things that I focus on, the 4 things that I'm good at, the 4 things that I really want to do. And that's it. I'm not dealing with the day-to-day stuff, not dealing with all that stuff. I'm just hyper focused on what I'm great at and what I want to do.
Yeah, it drives down to what's your why, right? What is the why that drives me forward? And, a lot of people, their why, and I started out my why was to make enough money. But if you ask enough why questions, right, it's so I can have freedom with my family and all this. And so I guess talk to me a little bit more about your why and how it's maybe changed from when you were 24 in Florida to where you are today.
Yeah, I'm still working on my why, and I've been listening to Know Your Why and Find Your Why, something like that. There's a couple of books like that. And I'm listening to one now about finding my why, because I feel like I still want to define it a little bit clearer, because to just say, hey, my why is my family and travel, that's great. And that is my why. But I feel like it's got to become more defined than that. So I'm working on that currently to define my why better. But I will tell you, at least in generalities, my why when I was younger, my why was success by a title and a figure. Like I wanted to make $100,000 a year, which sounds, kind of funny now. That's like back then that was like probably $300,000 a year now, but I wanted to make $100,000 a year 20 something years ago. I wanted to make $20,000 a year. I'm sorry, $100,000 a year. And I wanted to be the vice president of a company by 30 years old. Like those are like my whys, my drive. And that's what I wanted. And I achieved those. I actually took a step back, but I think at like 29, I made $100,000 a year. And then took a step back because I switched roles, but I had a higher position and I was VP by 29, I think. And so I hit those goals and that was cool. And I was in a failing marriage. I'm divorced once. I was in a marriage that it was my, probably 100% my fault, at least a big percentage my fault, just not being a good husband, not picking the right partner. I mean, good person, just didn't have drive. I needed someone like just a lot of mistakes I made. I was not doing well in life. I was working for a company I wasn't happy with. I did all these things and I achieved these goals and I still didn't have the happiness I thought I was going to have when I achieved those goals. But I didn't know any better. I mean, that's how I grew up. Like that. This is what I wanted. This is what people do. This is, you get a good job, you move up in the job, you try to be a high level executive, you make good money, and then you retire. And I didn't know what I was missing. I just didn't know what entrepreneurship or business ownership was. It's not what I grew up working in the worker's mentality, that it took me till 38 years old in a coffee shop amongst other people that are talking about billion-dollar ideas to be like, oh, wait a second, I don't have to just be the norm. I could be something totally different.
Yeah. I mean, you were in a level of comfort, right? Mm-hmm. And you were chasing what everyone else thought that you should have instead of really thinking about what you really wanted. And I fell into that trap too. I went to college, I got a master's degree, I went and did jobs, and then, you get the 6-figure salary, you got the suburban house and the 4 kids, and you're not fulfilled because you're not making anything. I'm not creating anything. I was working in digital marketing, and basically just a cog in the wheel trying to move somebody else's ball forward. And it just crushed my soul after a few years. And it wasn't until I really found entrepreneurship and got back into getting that creative energy of, I'm not artsy, but creating a business and building something for myself and setting an example for my kids, that I really found fulfillment in that and was proud of what I was doing. And I think too many people, they chase that, what everyone else thinks they should have. And then they get themselves so deep into it with the cars and the boats and I'll buy a beach house and I'll do all these things that try to make myself happy. And then they have their kids leave, and then they're left with a spouse that they don't know, and a house they don't want, and a car their friends thought was cool. And what do they have? A job that they hate. It's not the life that I want either, right? And so there's few of us out there that see that early enough to make the change before those golden handcuffs get thick enough that we can't escape.
It's so easy too. You're right, because the more you're in it, you make that 100 grand, 120, 130. You can't take a step back at that point. Well, at least you tell yourself that. Like whether it's financially, you just built your expenses up that high, or it's ego. Let's be real. It's ego that says, I can't take a step back. I was VP of a company. I can't go back to, making the 28 grand I did in sales one year and like taking that huge step back. I can't do that. I'm fortunate enough that I was able to overcome that by the time I was in my, about 38 years old when I did it. But most people, they can't overcome that. Like I said, usually the golden handcuffs, you brought your expenses up to whatever your income is. So now you're just strapped and you can't, get out of it. But I feel like it's probably equally ego.
And then you add some kids and a wife in there that have a standard of living that they expect. And even if they would accept, something lower, you as the provider, I'm speaking a little bit, just male focused here, but you as the provider don't feel like you can reduce the quality of life that they have by chasing your dreams, right? And so it's a massive struggle that is a mental hurdle that a lot of us have to get over in order to chase our dreams. And the other option is to not chase your dreams and live a life that's unfulfilled. So let's change topics a little bit. We're getting pretty deep right here. Talk to me a little bit about what you're currently doing in Charleston. I know you've started a more recent venture. See a lot of stuff on social media about it. Those posts are great. Talk to me about what you're doing, who you're trying to help, and just kind of that whole opportunity.
It's funny. I kind of took a step back at the end of last year and was just thinking, like, what are we trying to achieve with our business? Again, we have so many different arms. I was doing a little bit of lending. I was doing roofing company, some education, a lot of different things. I'm like, all right, let's hone in on the basics. Like, what are we great at and what do we start at? And one of them is real estate sales. So I was like, all right, I want to continue doing real estate sales, regular retail, helping investors find homes. But what's the overall goal of Rivers Capital Group, RCG? And the overall goal is truly want to help people build wealth through real estate. That's our goal because that's what we're good at. And that's what we do for ourselves. Okay, well, what avenues am I helping people build wealth through real estate? And one of them is, helping buy and sell a home, whether it's investment property or regular home. So that's one thing that we're honed in on. I now have a team of, there's 4 of us that are licensed, and I have an executive assistant, which I highly recommend. By the way, the executive assistant's how I have time to do things. Definitely one of the best hires ever. So I just had to recently switch executive assistants, but this one I'm super excited about. And then, so the real estate side of things. So we're still doing we're on pace to probably do anywhere from 60 to 80 deals this year on that side. But again, we have a team of 4. And then the other thing that we're doing a little bit of fix and flip. We're trying to get away from that, but we're still doing a few of those right now, bigger projects. And then our main focus, 80+% of our time and our focus is on SynergyStays. That is a short-term rental revenue management optimization company. All that means is basically we got really good at maximizing the gross revenue for short-term rentals. And because we started off as just a short-term rental company for a couple of years ago, and we have, 30 properties, 35, whatever it is. And we realized that we're consistently at the top 10% of the market or better when it comes to revenue being driven for all the properties that we're managing. And then as time goes on and we're just seeing the landscape kind of change when it comes to short-term rentals, where, you got your PMS systems, your property management software that do a lot of the guest service side of things. You have some AI that's now coming in to handle a lot of the guest. People have been able to be really good at the hospitality side, getting the reviews up, making sure it's clean, making sure the property's in great shape. But everybody was kind of just, not everybody, but most people were just kind of just sliding through on the revenue side of things because 2020, 2021, 2022, short-term rentals were huge. You could fill it and you can have an okay property and make a ton of money. What we realized in 23 and 24, those numbers came down to pre-COVID numbers. So you actually had to make an effort to be at the top 10% of your market and drive revenue for your short-term rentals. And this is something that my partner, who's been doing this since 2015, is great at. He's great at maximizing revenue and seeing revenue opportunities for properties. So we took a step back and we just said, hey, let's double down on this. Let's really focus on doing just revenue management. We still do some short-term rental management here in Charleston, but we're focused heavily on revenue management because we can do it anywhere in the country. You can have a short-term rental in Hawaii, Alaska. We have San Diego. We just took on some clients. We have Arizona. We have Florida, everywhere. We could take any type of short-term rental, whether you bring in about 50K a year gross or you're doing 250K a year. We have an awesome one down near Disney that's doing a couple 100,000 a year. We can come in and basically through a 3-step process, we help you optimize your listing. We'll give you a bunch of advice to help optimize your listing. And then from there, we make sure that you're right price at the right time, and we do calendar management. We're literally looking at all of our properties daily, weekly, monthly, making tweaks as needed. We don't necessarily tweak them daily, but make adjustments as needed to make sure that we are pricing that property and hitting that optimal booking window to maximize the revenue for our properties. And that's what we're doing throughout the country, and we're super excited about it. We just added some software, so the reporting will be done online. You can log in and see it updates every 24 hours. So within a day, you're going to have real live reporting on how your property is performing versus the market and overall. We're about to streamline our onboarding process. So that's pretty much done online. That's probably going to be another month and a half till and then we're hiring a data analyst, and we got a sales team we're building out. And we're just super excited of what we can do here, because the term revenue management is becoming more and more popular. And we truly feel that we are one of the best, if not the best in the business at driving revenue for short-term rentals.
So let's just say I'm a short-term rental owner. I've got a pop place in the mountains of North Carolina. That's where I'm from, right? Not in the mountains, but North Carolina. And I've got decent people coming in. I've got some good reviews. So I would basically be reaching out to you and your company, and you would be helping me optimize to get the most amount of stays and make the most amount of money over the course of the year, correct?
Correct. Yep. And we work with property managers, or if you do the hospitality side yourself, we can work with you. If you have a property management software or don't, we can work with you. We always recommend that you do have one. It's a lot easier. But absolutely, yeah, we have a couple mountain houses over in North Carolina, and we actually work with the property manager who's great at the hospitality side, and we handle the revenue management side.
Interesting. So I would imagine with, all the talk of AI, I know you mentioned it here in the last year or something, that your company's looking pretty hard at how you can automate a lot of this, because it sounds like what you got is there's a lot of manual things, but there are also a lot of very repeatable processes that could be automated over time. So how have you integrated AI into your system, and how do you plan on adding it in more in the future?
Yeah, that's it's definitely something that I always look at, and I know a lot of people are doing right now. So our business is qualitative and quantitative. So basically the qualitative, the art, I like to say it's an art and a science. The science part, the science and the onboarding and reporting, we're looking to automate as much as possible. And then the art side, you can't do that. That's where the artist comes in, but that's the final 10-15%. So we use Price Labs pretty much exclusively, and Price Labs does, a lot of the research and the data regarding the pricing, but it's not perfect. If you just use Price Labs, set it and forget it, you'll be maybe 10% better, but everybody's using a pricing software now. So where we're trying to use AI and automations are on, like I said, the reporting's almost done. That'll be automated. The onboarding will be more of an automation. And then possibly using some AI to pull data from a few different sources when it comes to pricing or trends in a market, so that it could pull all that data, put it in an easy to use, quick dashboard for our team. And then our data analyst / revenue manager can take the quantitative data, and then make qualitative decisions for that house based on that. So I don't ever see this truly becoming 100% AI or tech can take this over and do it perfectly. Maybe, never say never, because of that art part of it. You have to understand markets, human behavior, what's going on. You have to really look at it from that 10,000 foot vision, but have that data to back it up as well. So we're trying to make it, you're right, we're trying to make it that as much as the quantitative stuff can either be calculated through those systems, or maybe some certain systems or rule sets that we put together are kind of standardized through AI or automations. But after that, then revenue manager can do that final 10%, 10 or 15%, where they make those final adjustments to truly maximize your revenue.
So the idea is, instead of one human looking at 5 or 7 different data sources and then compiling that and coming up with a decision to move forward, using AI to, in real time, crunch those numbers and look for patterns, and then provide up maybe a recommendation or highlight something that is either wasn't noticeable or could be actionable, and then having the human decide whether they should take action on that or what action to take based on that. You're saving that last 10% for the human, which then should thus reduce your amount of man hours that you can need for that, number of people to do that, and you should be able to manage more properties and manage them more effectively because you're using someone that's higher skilled because you don't have to pay as many people, right, to do the same task.
100%. The whole goal is to have high level, great staff that are the artists and use automations, AI, and technology to do all the rest of the filtering. 100%. We're doing the same similar stuff in our real estate business. We just brought on a company that's not only a CRM, but they have a marketing channel as well. And we're able to do direct target meta targeted ads through the CRM. So when a listing goes up, it automatically pulls all the data up into our CRM, and then meta targeted ads go right out to put it right in front of you. So absolutely that's why I was like, you know what, instead of doing 7 businesses, I want to do a couple. There's 2 businesses we focus on and do them extremely well and have teams for each.
Yeah, I think you're heading down a great path. When I first heard about Chat GPT, a year and a half ago or whenever it was, my first thought was like, this is going to revolutionize the way property management is done because I don't know anything about short-term rentals, but long-term rentals, I had like 65 of those at one point. And if you think about what a property manager does, you're collecting payments, you're doing paperwork, you're following up with people. Like 90% of that could be handled by AI if programmed correctly. And then you just need basically someone to sit in an office and collect paper, and do the final little bit of work. But imagine a tenant can just call anytime and talk to an AI, get answers to their questions in real time, pay everything, everything's filed immediately. There's no delay. It could really make things very streamlined. And so it sounds like the similar things could happen for, short-term rentals, specifically with the revenue optimization stuff.
Yeah, 100%. And then on the other side, so the short-term rentals we're utilizing AI to communicate with most guests. You put a nice vendor sheet together. You do a lot of if this, then that questionnaires, and then just kind of let it flow. So therefore, again, instead of having 85, 90, 95% of guest communications handled through AI, and then you just handle that top 10%. It's just, that's what it is. I don't know that 100% of these things can or should be done without human interaction, but if a decent amount of it can, it's worth it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the fine line, right? Is how can you automate as much as possible while still maintaining some human feel? But the idea is to basically reduce your costs while increasing your customer service satisfaction, right? And that's really what you're striving for.
Yeah, we want to be, because, just like in business, like I talked about the top 4 things I want to focus on, that's what I want to do. Same thing when it comes to these companies. Let's get everything automated, systematized, so that my team is dealing with the top 10% of questions or issues or judgment calls or decisions to make, so that they're not wasting their time. It's not about, like you said, you communicate better, but it's also about better service. Because if you can take away those $10 and $100 an hour tasks that are automatically done, and now your team's focus on those, those really important decisions to truly drive revenue and help clients, like that's where I want their attention on. I don't want them distracted by, I use this example, my right-hand man, Jake, will give me crap, but I use this example all the time. Like when I had to fire my old executive assistant, I just hired a new one. And in that gap, I'm opening mail and paying bills. I'm like, I don't want to do this. It takes up too much headspace. And he's like, just do it. I have to do it. And I'm like, I get that. But if you want me to drive revenue and do these high level things, that takes so much energy out of me. I don't know why. I just hate it. It takes so much energy out of me that I'm not thinking at a high level anymore that day. And I just feel like if we don't try to use it to replace everything, if we use it properly to make our systems better so that our teams are just doing higher level decision-making and jobs, I think that's where businesses can really use AI and technology to just give this super extra level of service to their clients. And that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah. I was catching crap from my business partner the other day because I spent like 3 hours or something building out a workflow, not even AI, just building out a workflow. So when someone submits a proof of funds request on our website, before it would come to me and I would manually enter it into the form and then send it to them. And so I spent like 3 hours building the process that automatically sends the proof of funds out to him. He's like, yeah, why spend 10 minutes on a proof of funds when you could spend 3 hours on it? I'm like, well, exactly, because now that's 10 minutes. I don't ever have to think about it, right? And maybe I was in the process of doing something. I was in, flow state mentally working on something. And then we want to have good customer service. So proof of funds comes in. I have to stop what I'm doing, go do that. It doesn't take much time, but it does break up my focus. And now I don't have to worry about that. And I have that lead in the CRM, and now I can follow up. And so it'll lead to better conversion. It's better customer service. And it did cost me 3 hours one time, but over the course of, a year, all those 3 hours will probably be regained plus some because of the 10-minute increments, every couple of days or every day that I have to fill those things out.
It's funny because I think that's where a lot of business owners get hung up. And that's why these mastermind groups and just being around other people that you talk through these things can kind of open your eyes, because it's easy to be sucked in the business and do the business every day and not necessarily work on the business. But it doesn't matter that it took you 3 hours to save the 10 minutes. The point of it is now the system's in place and you don't have to spend the 10 minutes ever again. I mean, that's always well worth it when you're trying to build something big. If you're just doing a few one-offs, you loan to 5 people a year, yeah, you don't need to do that. But when you're trying to build a business, those pay for themselves. Like you said, it probably pay for itself. What's that? 10 minutes, 3 hours, that's 6, 12, 180. So 18 proofs of funds, and you're now net positive.
By June, probably, or before then.
There you go.
That's awesome. So give me an example of, so you see all these short-term rental owners coming in. There's got to be like consistent, like one or two or three things that you are seeing that they're doing incorrectly that you can just easily tweak to make their overall product better. So what are kind of a couple of those really common things that people are doing wrong?
All right. Number one, first and foremost, is everybody focusing on the guest ratings and making sure you have a 4.9 5-star rating, which is great. You absolutely need high ratings, because if you don't have good reviews, if you have a lot of issues that you're not dealing with your property right there, it's going to be hard we don't want to work with someone that has pretty much under like a 4.5 rating and not trying to improve it. Like, I'm not saying things don't happen. We'll help you improve it, help you get there. But if you're like, yeah, I don't care, kind of like the slumlord of short-term rentals, not a lot of them out there, but that's not going to work for us, because how can we drive revenue when your ratings are so low? But the number one thing I see is, so people focus on that and they have high ratings, which is 100% absolutely great, because you want high ratings. But then they're not necessarily on page 1, 2, or 3 of Airbnb and stuff. They're not worried about like really the listing optimization side of things, or maybe not. They're not worried about it. They just maybe need guidance and have people show them how to really optimize their listing. Because if you don't have the visibility, I don't care how well you do revenue management, not enough people are seeing your property, and that's going to be a huge factor. So one of the biggest things that we've been able to help the majority of our clients, there's a few that have come in on page 1 and their visibility is amazing. But for the most part, the first thing we do is help guide them to maximize that visibility, get them on higher up on the SEO on search rankings, get them so they're on page 1 or 2 of Airbnb, so that they have the visibility to make that more money. And just that one step of giving people some of those pieces of advice, just that one step has helped, usually pays for, depends on the type of property. Sometimes a third of our year, half our year, our whole year in revenue, just from that one change over the first 30 or 45 days. So that's been huge. And it's certain things like, you can't look at a short-term rental like you look at a regular listing. So if you're into real estate and you're an investor, which a lot of them are that buy short-term rentals, they've probably flipped or sold homes before. The pictures look like that. Like, the picture of your kitchen should not be the first picture, or a beautiful picture of the outside of the house can be, but it really has to be that perfect, what's the word I want to use for it? I can't think of the word, but basically that golden money view that you want everybody to see. You want, like, if you have a mountain house and you have a hot tub, you want a view of the deck with the hot tub of the sun setting over the mountains. That should be your first picture. That's where people are going to book, not your kitchen. They don't care. They're not going to your Airbnb. Yeah, maybe if you have a chef and they're hosting a big event and they really need a nice kitchen to host the event, maybe. But it's really showing off your amenities, showing off the reasons why they want to rent that place is huge. Not only that, is also the title. We see a lot of times people, I like to use this example down here in Charleston, they'll have like the Magnolia House. Sounds cool. Oh, I have the Magnolia House. It tells me nothing. If I'm on Airbnb and I'm scrolling through, I don't know what that means. And unless your picture grabs me and the name, your title didn't grab me, I'm going to the next one. Now, if you say house with a beautiful garden, 2-minute walk to downtown Charleston's, greatest restaurants, or maybe that's a little bit long, but you get what I'm saying. Put a little description of why people want to book your house in the description. Huge. And that makes a big gain. That's a big difference. A couple other little ancillary things are right picture order, labeling each picture, and then lastly, just making sure you have as many amenities as you can possible checked off. And I don't mean you have to have a pool and a hot tub, but I mean, if you're kid friendly, you want a bassinet, you want a high chair, you want a playpen, you want toys, like check as many little boxes off on that list, and it helps with your search rankings. So that's probably first and foremost one of the biggest issues people have. And then number two, one of the biggest things I see a lot, and I also see people post, they'll be like, I remember I saw someone post last year, it was like June, and they're like, hey, I'm fully booked in my Airbnb through the rest of the year. I'm like, that's actually not a win. That's not a good thing, because that means you were so cheap that people booked your units way too far in advance. So that's why we focus on that right price at the right time and calendar management. First off, you want to know what your optimal booking window is. If you're a short-term rental downtown Charleston, you're probably 30 days out. If you're a mountain house, you're probably 4 to 6 months out your optimal booking window, because that's when people are going to book a property like yours. And I could nerd out about this a lot, but bottom
Is
line,
that is that always true? Because so like there's a house I follow on Instagram and it's got like a water slide in the back, or not water slide, a waterfall that you can slide down in the backyard. And that thing is booked out like a year and a half. The only time it's not booked is like January when no one's sliding down the waterfall. Right. And so is that always true, or is that, generally true, except for those kind of like very specific, circumstances where it's just such a unique property that people have to book far out in advance because they want to get in?
yeah, and you'll have some of those. Like we have one down in the Disney World area that could book out a lot more in advance because it's very unique. It's one of the only ones in the area that sleeps 20. So yeah, no, there's not always like, oh, every mountain house is 6 months. Every city wants 30 days. It takes us a little bit to get in there and figure it out. And it's trial and error and testing it. But once you figure out what that booking window is based on the property, you want to book as much in that optimal booking window. So no, that absolutely can vary. And it can vary from year to year. There's just different things that change factors. I mean, COVID changed things versus, and then as we started getting out of COVID, there's different factors that change. That's why it's important. That's why you want to hire someone like us. Like we're constantly making tweaks, and as markets change, trends change, as technology changes, there's so many factors that change constantly that you need to stay on top of all these things to truly maximize that revenue. But my point was, we just see a lot of people might say they're so obsessed with either occupancy or their average daily rate only that they're truly missing opportunity to drive their revenue. And I'll give you two quick examples. We had one property that small little ADU, additional dwelling unit, just small studio unit in Charleston. It was 87% occupied. But with some of the tweaks and changes we did, it only brought in 30 grand a year. It's just a small unit. Some of the tweaks and changes we did, we were able to get it to 89% occupied, raise their average daily rate about $20 a night, and that equaled $4,500 extra for the year, which is like a 15%, 14% increase on a small property. And then we had another property in Merle's Inlet that we actually lowered their average daily rate. I want to say last I looked was $75 a night. So we lowered their average daily rate $75. And most people would be like, we'd fire you in 2 seconds for doing that. However, that was able to drive their occupancy up. I want to say it was around 30% more. And they brought in an extra $32,000 last year from our services with those few tweaks. We just see that unless you could truly spend a lot of your time on your short-term rental, focusing on these things daily, being in masterminds, which my partner's in two big mastermind groups when it comes to revenue management, studying up on tips and trends and technology and constantly staying on top of it, you're probably leaving some money on the table. And there's some ways that you can maximize that revenue.
Yeah. So I think that anytime people think that they're the smartest one on a topic, but they don't do it every day, they're missing out. I fell into this trap when I started doing Google ads for the lending business. We were just throwing money and we were doing great. We raised a bunch of money that way. But then as soon as I hired somebody, we like cut our ad spend down by like a third and our number of leads went up by a third. And it was like, oh, I threw like $15,000 away just because I was doing it how I thought it should be done without knowing the system and all the intricacies of the system. And I'm sure this is the same, right?
Yeah, just like I started off with, and I'll just hone on it again. Try to do 7 things. We now focus on just these 2 areas. We have a team that does real estate, so that's only about 10 to 20% of our time. SynergyStays is 80-90. When you truly focus on something, and then we have team members, our team members, 100% what they focus on. When you truly focus on one thing, and you're humble and you're willing to say, hey, listen, I don't know everything. I'm always willing to change, adjust, adapt. That's when you could be great at something. And that's why I get so excited about SynergyStays. We are able to be great at something that people need more than ever now. Again, because revenue's gone down. People bought a lot of the short-term rentals 2020, 2021, 2022 on revenue projections that just aren't happening anymore. So now more than ever, it's important to pay, we're $300 a month. So little over $3,000 for the year to help you gain an extra 10, 12, $15,000 that you may be missing out on and staying ahead of the curve and being one of the top places in your market to stay at instead of just your average 50%.
Is that what your average customers, increasing their revenue is, 15,000, or do you use a percentage, or, what does your average customer receive once they start using your service?
Yeah, that's really tough to say. I'd have to dive deep into those numbers as far as that, because we have people that make, like I said, they grossed 40 grand last year, and we have people that have grossed in $200,000. So it's really hard. And that would be skewed if I'm like, oh, it's, $22,000 each customer. And I don't want to ever promise something that I can't back up. I think that's BS when people are like, oh, I promise you'll double your money or your money back or all that. Don't we do? What we promise, our guarantee, is that we're going to do what we can to get you at the top 10% of your market for your property. So if that means your market average, your property should make 60 and you're only making, 50, then we should be able to get you that extra 10 grand, 8 to 10 grand. It takes some time to get you up there, but we want to get you in that top tier of your market for your property and the other reason why you can't guarantee a number, Lauren, which is something that's like super important. Like when you saw 2020, 2021, 2022, those numbers are drastically different than 2023 and 2024. So if I'm promising you I can make you more money and the entire market went down 20%, how can I make you more than last year when the market's gone down? No, but what we want to make sure you do, if the market goes down 20%, maybe you go down 5% and you're still maximizing your revenue and being at the top of your market. So that's why we go based on, hey, we want to keep you at the top of your market so that whatever's going on, you're performing at peak performance for your short-term rental.
Awesome. Though you mentioned it a little bit here. I'm going to shift topics just a touch. So you mentioned masterminds and networking. Can you talk a little bit about how that's impacted you as a person and you as a business owner, and how that plays into SynergyStays?
Yeah. So first and foremost, I wouldn't even be an entrepreneur. I wouldn't be in investing if it wasn't for being in the right rooms. It wasn't a mastermind, but what it was a breakfast meetup once a month at 60 Bull Cafe in downtown Charleston. And in the late 2018 was the first one I ever went to. And it was probably like 15, 18 of us. And most of us are still in business and friends and, around each other. But I just remember being in that coffee shop and just talking about real estate. Again, I'm new to sales, just started out. And I'm listening to a couple of people in that room talk about 100 million ideas, $1 billion. It's like, why not just add a zero? Why not do this? One of the people in that room was a mentor coach of mine forever, Kelly. And she runs a $120 million private money lending fund now. And she's a partner on that. And then another person in that room was this guy, Danny, who is part of a big, they do a lot of syndications, car washes, multifamily, et cetera. Manages 1.4 billion with a B under asset management right now. 2018, they were players, they were doing things, but in that 5-6 year time frame, this is what they built. So I was able to be in a room for once in my life around people talking about big ideas, big things. They took big actions. They built these empires, and they're still friends to this day. And I can call on either one of them if I need guidance or help. And it's just because I was in that coffee shop, and I didn't go once, I didn't go twice. I went every single month, because it takes, whether it's a mastermind group, whether it's investor meetups, if you don't do it every single month for 2 to 3 years, that first year, people are just starting to get to know you. They're like, oh, this guy shows up every time, or this girl shows up every time. The second year, they're starting to build some bonds with you. And by that third year, you're starting to do business with people if you're doing it right and you're showing up. So I can't stress enough, whether it's a mastermind. My buddy, Tim Bratz, who runs Legacy Family Mastermind, it's one of the ones I'm in. Love it. Just past the 3-year mark. And he says he doesn't do things unless he's going to do it for at least 3 years. He won't commit to anything unless he's going to do it for at least 3 years, because it takes that amount of time to really grow. And he was actually telling me he talked to a billionaire. He was talking to a billionaire a couple months ago. And the billionaire said they don't make decisions unless it's something that they want or would do for the next 50 to 100 years. So they're thinking generationally. They're not even thinking like, oh, I'll do it for 2 years. I'm not saying yes to something unless I really want to do it for the next 50 to 100 years. And that just blew my mind. I'm like, all right, well, that's, and if you don't believe in these groups, if you don't believe in it, that's perfectly fine. That's probably where you're at. I doubt that if people don't believe in that, I doubt that their success is going to be capped. It just is. Once you have that abundance mindset and being in the rooms with others who have done things that you want to do, and that's who you get to ask. I'm not asking no offense, I absolutely love my family, but I'm not going to ask my dad for business advice on how to start a business, or I'm having hurdles in my business, or I'm just not going to, because that's just not his expertise, and that's fine. But by being in these rooms, any hurdle I have, I could throw it out there and someone has dealt with it and someone has overcome it and they're going to help me do it. And, maybe it would take me 2 years and now I'm going to do it in 2 weeks because I have that head start because I'm in a mastermind and I'm talking to people who are way smarter than me. That's where it comes back to, like we had talked about. You got to be humble. You got to be willing to show humility, and you got to be willing to just ask hard questions and be vulnerable, and don't be afraid to say when you have a problem. Those rooms will truly help you and change your life.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with all of that. I think that too many people think that they can just answer all their own questions. And what happens is they get stuck with the same question for months, right? And then they finally figure it out and they're so happy. Well, guess what? Sorry to say, most people aren't special. They're not special. And every problem that you've ever had, someone else has already had it, solved it, had the next problem and solve that one. And so why do you want to put yourself through the process of struggling through something when you could just ask somebody that already has done it and say, oh yeah, just do this, and then it's done and you can move on. And that's how you grow and scale, right? So I'm 100% in agreement with that. I think that the 3 years thing is like the bare minimum. 3 years is the bare minimum you should do something. And this is why I got rid of several of the businesses I had, because I looked at my life in 10 years and I said, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. So those things got to go. What do I want to be doing in 10 years? And that's what I'm going to focus on. So like you, I didn't have 7, I had 5, and I trimmed those down to 1 over the last year. And same outcome, much more focused, much more successful.
Love it.
So, yeah, that's awesome. We met at a Legacy meeting, and I have to admit that I still have not joined Legacy. I think I try really hard to get away from the lack of abundance mindset there, but it's still, when you're starting out, like there's a big price tag associated with that. And without the like guarantee, like, oh, I know I'm going to make this much more money, it's hard to justify those costs. And so I get why people don't do it, because I've fallen into that trap as well. But I am a firm believer in network. I'm a firm believer in it is the right thing to do, especially if you've got large dreams and large aspirations.
100%. By the way, they're doing a mastermind here in Charleston, April 3rd and 4th. Hopefully you can sign up for that one and come down.
I should reach out to Tim and ask him about that.
It's on this recording now, so I'll hold you accountable.
Okay. I think that's the one we met at last year too. All right. So we're getting close to an hour here. I got just kind of 2 more questions. One thing I want to ask everybody is, as an entrepreneur, there's a lot of stress on your family. There's a lot of stress on the business, and basically you're one person stuck kind of in the middle. How have you been able to manage kind of that work-life balance, if you want to call it that, as you have one child, one on the way, a wife, and then also growing a large business?
So obviously, just like everything in life, whether it's life, business, all that stuff, it's always a learning curve. You make mistakes, you fail forward, you learn from it, and you grow. So nothing moves perfectly, but that's one of the biggest reasons why I hired an executive assistant. My goal is to, Dan Martell wrote this book and I'm in the middle of reading it, but I kind of live this life anyway, Buy Back Your Time. And he basically talks about, instead of hiring to fill a role there you go. Yep. It's you hire to buy back your time. You basically hire you write down the list of things. What are you doing every day? All the things you're doing. All right. What do you want to do? And what do you not want to do? And then you hire for that role to take up everything off your plate that you don't want to do. And that's where an executive assistant comes in. And so that's a huge help, having a good executive assistant that can do all the tasks that I don't want to do and really train them up so that I can focus on the 4 things that I need to do a day. Be very intentional. This is something that's really hard for me. My mind it's really hard for me to focus. I have to work extra hard to sit down and focus, but I try to be better every day, to be more intentional about my day, so that because I know if I am intentional for 2 to 3 hours, I can get a ton done. I mean, I could make movement if I'm intentional for those 2 to 3 hours. So then outside of that, I can take my daughter to school in the morning. I got to pick her up in the afternoon. I can do whatever, maybe still revenue generating activities, but just in a different manner. So that's how I try to do that. I'm trying to put the team in place. I'd rather make less money and have more time. So I'm serious about whatever business I'm building. I want to put a team in place to take as much time off my plate so that I'm focused on the high revenue generating activities, and I can be intentional with that time and have more time for the family and myself.
I think so. For me, just asking the question when I go to start doing something, is this a revenue generating activity, or is there a revenue generating activity that I could do instead? And focusing on those things, that's made a huge difference for me. And then, I'm just very committed to when it's my time to be with my kids, like I really try to put my phone down. Like I don't answer phone calls after a certain time. Now I say that, and I'm not 100% perfect, right? But trying to be present as much as I can is something I strive for. It sounds like you're doing something similar.
Yeah, I think that's so important. The presence, because your kids see you on the phone all the time. And that's like the other day I was doing some work. I think I was looking at applications for a sales role. And I was doing that. And I was on my phone. And my daughter like pulled my hand a couple times. Hey, daddy, come on. It was like 6:00 at night. I took a second. I was like, just shut everything down, threw it to the side. I was like, yep, you're right. Let's go. Because it was really important. We had to go, jump around in the bed or find monsters or something. I don't know. But it was way more important than that phone call and looking at a sales role position. But yeah, it's just being intentional about that.
So, all right. We try to end all these, or I'm going to try to end all these with just a little bit about, if you have 2 minutes, I won't say anything, you can say anything you want, but, give me something that you have learned in your current state that you would either want to tell yourself when you were just getting started out as advice, or something that you know currently that you want to tell your kids when they're in their 20s just starting out.
I'm going to go with the kid side of things because I do have part of a nonprofit called the Impact Program here in Charleston, and we mentor youth. And one of the biggest things I think I would have known back then, and I think kids need to know now, is that when we're in kindergarten, when we're little kids, we dream big and we have all these big visions, and it just gets crushed over time with other people's limitations being put on what you can do. And I just want to remind my daughter, don't let someone else's failures dictate the level and what you can achieve, the level of what you can achieve. And I don't want other people's hardships, other people's mindsets shaping my daughter and soon to be my son's future. So if I had to say that to myself, it's not only dream big, but act big. And whatever you want to go for, just add a 0 or make it 10 times as big a goal. Because I had if you have a goal to make $1 million, and you make 700,000, you're probably going to be pretty happy. But if your goal is 100,000, you make 70, you're going to feel like a failure. So like go for the bigger goal because you're going to think of ways to do it differently. And then if you cheat 70% of that, you still do it. But the biggest thing I want to drive home, especially to the youth, is don't let anybody take away those dreams of you dreaming big. I don't care what it is. Look at what Elon Musk is doing, whether you like him or hate him. I don't care, but it's bringing people to outer space. And it's just what you can do if you truly don't care what anybody else thinks and just focus on your goal and how to achieve it. You can achieve anything. And yeah, I think this thing is so important.
Well said. Well said. All right, Dan, it's been amazing having you on the podcast. If anybody wants to reach out to you to talk short-term rentals, Charleston real estate, how can they get a hold of you, and how can they reach out to SynergyStays if they have short-term rental that they're looking to, really, bring up to the next level?
Yeah. If you guys, if you want to talk to me, or if you just want a free ebook with some tips and tricks on how to maximize your revenue for your short-term rental, you can go to www.synergystayslocal.com. That's SynergyStays with an S, local.com. You can also follow me on Instagram, Facebook, Dan Rivers _RCG, Rivers Capital Group.
And we'll put all your links and everything in the show notes so anybody can see those. It's been a pleasure, always a pleasure talking to you, Dan. So thankful for you to come on and tell your story, give us your insights. If anybody has anything they want to reach out to, please reach out to Dan. And if you got some value out of this podcast, like it, share it with some friends, and stay tuned for the next episode next week. So have a great day.
Appreciate you.
Thanks for tuning in to Brick by Brick Wealth Building Conversations. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. It helps more people find the show. For more tips, resources, and updates on my journey, follow me on Invest with Lauren. Let's keep building wealth, one brick at a time. See you next week.